But let's begin with that story. Mixed reactions are trailing the threat by the President of the United States, Donald Trump, to carry out a military intervention in Nigeria. This comes after he designated Nigeria as country of particular concerns, arguing that Christians in the country are facing an existential threat. The U.S. president threatened to send U.S. forces to Nigeria with guns blazing, stating that if Africa's most populous country does not stem what he described as the killing of Christians by Islamist extremists, the U.S. will intervene. Meanwhile, Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu says the characterization does not reflect the nation's reality, emphasizing that religious freedom and tolerance have been a core tenet of the country's collective identity. The U.S. had previously designated Nigeria on the same list in 2020, though the designation was lifted in 2023. Now, still speaking on reactions, groups monitoring violence say there is no evidence to suggest that Christians are being killed in Nigeria. While speaking on the rate of violence in Nigeria with a focus on the persecution of Christians, figures from the European Parliament reveal that 17,000 Christians were killed in targeted attacks between 2019 and 2023. More than 7,000 victims were reported. About 7,800 kidnappings are recorded in the first 7 months of 2025. Nigeria's government has, however, stated that it would welcome U.S. assistance in fighting an ongoing Islamist insurgency as long as its territorial integrity was respected. Now let's get into this as we bring in a professor of international relations and strategic studies, David Awarawo. He joins me on What Now to discuss this development as well as the implications of this statement. Good to have you join us, Prof.
Thank you for having me.
Interesting times, you know, one must say. I'm not sure that we in Nigeria ever thought that one day we would have this kind of threat coming from one of our strategic partners in the West. But let me start by getting your thought on this threat from President Trump and what it says about where relations between Nigeria and the U.S. now stands.
Well, should we say interesting times? We should rather say frightening times.
Absolutely.
The times are frightening. When we consider and reflect on what happened in Iran in recent times, where the U.S. sent missiles into Iran unilaterally, and we have not had catastrophic consequences from the global community on that unilateral action against Iran by the U.S. The threat should be something frightening, but hopefully the U.S. will not do that because those who are killing people in Nigeria should be enemies of the U.S. as they are also enemies of the Nigerian government. And if we have a common enemy, we should work together to confront the enemy rather than be at each other's throats while the enemy continues to operate. So hopefully reason will prevail and the U.S. will see the need to cooperate with Nigeria to fight all the terrorists, the insurgents, and all the violent groups, rather than confronting the Nigerian government, as it has tried to do in the comments in the past couple of days.
And, you know, for a lot of people, Prof, you remember that the US president also, whilst he was dealing with the South African president, also mentioned issues around genocide of whites in South Africa, and then President Ramaphosa had to go to the White House. And, you know, a lot of people are saying, look, perhaps maybe this is not just about the security challenges in the North or in Nigeria. It could be beyond this. But I'm asking you, I know that you've been following this development, what you think is fueling this recent tension.
Yeah, there could be other things. There could be other interests. There are usually other interests for which, some leaders try to act the way President Trump has tried to act. But let us face it, Nigeria faces extensive level of insecurity that needs to be addressed. And if one is to speak specifically for, whether Christians have been attacked or not, the fact is that there are so many groups in Nigeria that are fighting, killing other groups, other people for different reasons. There are criminal mafia gangs who are killing everybody, both Christians and Muslims. And we also have extremists too who are also targeting Christians. Sometimes they attack churches, they kill people, they abduct priests, they choose Christmas Day, and other Christian holidays such as Easter to invade and all that. We also have them. We have to map out strategies to address all of these threats differently. The way we address those who are killing everybody, who are economic terrorists, is not the way we address extremists who are also targeting Christians and other groups like that. We need to understand all of this and admit all of this. But the point I'm making is that the United States government needs to work with the Nigerian government to be able
I seem to be having network challenges there with Prof. All right, I understand, Prof, you're back. You were speaking to my question, and I just wanted to wrap up your thought on that before we move to the next one. Prof, I want to confirm that you can hear me. All right, it seems like we do not have, we still have challenges. Prof can't seem to hear me, network issues. We'll just take a break. And then when we return, hopefully we'll have better connection. Stay with us, everyone. Thanks for staying with us, everyone. We've been speaking on the latest threats coming from the U.S. of military intervention in Nigeria, and particularly from the U.S. president. But we've been speaking with Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies, David Awarawo. He's standing by for us now to continue the conversation. Prof, thank you so much for staying with us.
Yeah, thank you. All
right, so I wanted to ask you, because sometime when this issue first started or came up, we heard the National Assembly saying they were going to, engage with the U.S. Congress as well. But up until now, that hasn't happened. In between when this issue first came up and now, do you think that the Nigerian government has taken sufficient steps to nip that narrative in the bud?
Yeah, the government has done a whole lot. The government has tried to engage. The government has sent delegations. We have also had groups from the United States that have come to Nigeria to try to do fact-finding regarding what is actually happening on ground. So much has happened, since all of this began. But the U.S. government seems to have made up its mind regarding what it wants to do. So a whole lot of what the Nigerian government has tried to do to show that this is a collective responsibility and we need to work together to combat it. Hasn't been accepted positively from the American end. And that is what needs to happen at this time. I was talking earlier about R2P, the responsibility to protect. That is to protect citizens that might be vulnerable. The provision at the international level adopted in 2005 provides for government to protect its citizens, and also provides for the international community to engage governments where they think that a section of the population is under threat. That is the stage we are supposed to be now. The U.S. government ought to engage the Nigerian government as to how we can do better in protecting Nigerians, whether Christian, Muslim, or whoever. But that hasn't happened. So the comments regarding military action is hasty. We haven't got there yet. And that is where it is concerning to us that the U.S. has just, opted for military action when other steps before then, haven't been explored. And secondly, also acting unilaterally. When you want to come in to, assist a country or to protect a section of the population, it has to be, multilateral, not a country just on its own, commencing an action that is unilateral. These are issues that are problematic regarding the American position, which the government needs to present clearer to the American authorities so that we can be on the same page in, attacking and, addressing this problem that we have faced for over a decade now.
And Prof, and I totally understand the R2P, which is the responsibility to protect that you mentioned, but I am wondering if it doesn't make provision for any country in the world to threaten another country, a sovereign nation as that, with intervention or invasion. that it is not in conflict with?
It doesn't. It doesn't at all. That is the point we are addressing. What it does is that it says that governments must protect all citizens. Nobody must be targeted for his identity, either religion or ethnicity or race or whatever. And then if it is perceived that a section of the population is facing threats, just like it's been mentioned that Christians are facing such threats in Nigeria, the next step is diplomatic engagement. The global community will engage the country involved, and then they will team up to address the problem. That is where we are supposed to be at this point. And then the third stage is a multilateral action, military action, to protect those people if the country is not able to do so. So what the American government is doing under Trump now has no place in international law, where a government on its own begins to threaten another country and wants to engage in military action unilaterally. It has no place in international law. But of course, we know that international law has a very weak mechanism for enforcement. And because of that, the powerful countries are the ones that dominate. They break this law with impunity, which is why some, from the days of Hugo Grotius till now, have asked the question, is international law?
And, Prof, one of the things, when you come back to reaction here, we've seen this particular threat taking a political coloration. For example, we've seen, leaders of other political parties sort of, some of them may be encouraging it, some of them also speaking against it. But we've also seen a few people, mostly based on political sentiments, sharing this rhetoric. And I'm wondering if we understand the implication at all, and maybe you should just enlighten us in a few minutes on the implication of these threats, if at all it is carried out.
Well, the implications are multifaceted, and they will affect everybody when if the threat is carried out. It is not something we should cheer, and that is the point we have always made, that some political leaders go to the extreme in trying to gain political advantage and currency from misfortune of some people in government. And in this instance, it's not just people in government, but it's all of us. One aspect that should be concerning to all of us is that when countries, world powers like the United States say they want to go and protect a group, they always go beyond that. We have it in Libya, we have it, in Iran, we have it in Iraq, we have it everywhere, we have it in Afghanistan. They always go beyond what they set out to. In 2011, I was at the government house in Abuja. Our ambassador to the United Nations at the time, Joy Ogu, lamented that they supported the UN resolution on Libya because they thought to be limited to just a few things. But those countries got the resolution and went haywire after getting the resolution in Libya. So it's not something any Nigerian should gloat over, to be happy about. We should all come together to make the US do what it ought to do. That we have a problem, security problem. What we need to do now is to engage, to see how to address it, and not threats of military action.
And Prof, I just also wanted to ask you, because again, it would seem like there are gaps, and I'm wondering in terms of communication, and I'm wondering how it would end. I know you said we've taken sufficient steps, but I'm wondering if it is now time, for the presidency to appoint ambassadors. Is that a gap as well in all of this?
It's a huge gap. There's no reason why Nigeria should not have ambassadors. This thing should have started with Nigerian ambassadors to the US, engaging the American government, but we don't have any. And in international relations, in diplomatic engagement, we have ranks. We have ambassadors, Papa Nuncios, Papa Legates. Then we have extra envoys extraordinary and minister plenipotentiary. We have ministers resident, and we have Shagid Afed. Those are the four levels. Now, those who have the capacity to be able to really achieve are ambassadors, we don't have. In fact, this is the time for the president to appoint ambassadors so that all of these things, when they come up, we have individuals with capacity to be able to address them. So I agree with you entirely. It's a huge gap. The fact that up till now, we do not have ambassadors in all the countries of the world, and even the world powers. We don't have in the United States, we don't have in many important countries across the world. It is time for the president to address that lacuna.
And Prof, let's just highlight some issues. First of all, there is the issue of the U.S. wanting to have a base in Nigeria that came up. Nigeria rejected. The issues of, the U.S. sending prisoners to Nigerians. In Nigeria, they were not prisoners, and Nigeria rejected. They came alignment with BRICS, which angered the U.S., especially because of China, and a host of other issues, because it looks like we're now aligning with the global north. And I'm wondering if, it now seems that this is a way to force our hand. Are we now in between, submission and hostility, and we have to pick one?
Well, there's even a fourth one, which is that Russia is gaining advantage, gaining popularity across West Africa. The U.S. doesn't want it, and the U.S. wants to twist as many countries as it can into that fold. But I don't think that Nigeria should capitulate. Nigeria should hold its own and insist on the right thing being done. Nigeria is not a banana republic that the U.S. can just threaten and want to invade and then come to invade. So we should just put our house in order, while also emphasizing the fact that we need to really address these security issues. I mean, they have not the approach that government has adopted, and then the commitment has been far less than expected over all of these years. We need to address that, so we don't give an opportunity for a country like the U.S. to want to use that as an opportunity to now come in to do other things. Like I said before, it only happens that when they come in to say they want to protect this group or address this problem, and then they end there, they always expand to other things. So all of these things you have highlighted are important, but Nigeria does not need to capitulate. Nigeria is not one of those small countries that one country will just come and threaten and then it begins to run eta-sketa. We should be mature. We should be professional. We should be perceptive in addressing the problem, and I think we'll be able to address it and address it effectively.
And because, Prof, this is the second time. First, it was South Africa, and now the U.S. And we've also seen issue around tariffs, on some African countries. And I'm wondering, is it also time? I'm just wondering, because I always take this conversation to the African Union somehow. We've not heard the African Union issue any sort of statement. Maybe ECOWAS cannot, because Nigeria, maybe ECOWAS as well, but majorly the African Union issuing any sort of statement, just speaking on the sovereignty of African nations. Does that also, is that an issue of concern for you as well?
Yes, it is. The African Union has failed at different levels on many fronts to defend the African position. When we analyze African international relations, there is what we call the solidarity norm, which sustained Africa for many decades, where African countries come together. The OAU, as it then was, presented a unified position to defend any African country that was under threat. The AU hasn't quite been up and doing along that line, and that's a huge letdown by the AU. It is by the way, Nigeria is a prominent member of the AU. It's high time that Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, and all those other prominent African leaders recognize the need for this, so that when an issue like this comes up, the AU should be able to speak up. If the AU has spoken up for South Africa, and the AU is speaking up now for Nigeria against the United States, it will be a lot easier. So it is an important gap that the AU needs to address, and very quickly too, before Africa becomes a continent that the big powers will think they can just harass and then get their way, and then expand neo-colonial influence. The AU needs to wake up as quickly as possible to address all of these problems that challenges that prominent African countries have faced in the last couple of months, especially from the time of Donald Trump. One thing I want to also add: people are saying that this is the new norm. I don't think it's a new norm. I think it will fizzle out. It is fugacious. It is ephemeral. Donald Trump will disappear and all of this will go. But we have to learn to deal with this now to survive it.
Well, like you said, frightening times. We'll see how the diplomatic instruments that both countries would use to address this current situation. Thank you so much for your time, as always. Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies, David Awarao.
Thank you for having me.
Right, let's now shift attention